Good morning and welcome to the town meeting program. As promised, we are going to talk about Fungus Fest today with Cathy from the Chamber and Kate from the Chugach National Forest. And the show is brought to you, as always, by Cordova Wireless Communications, your local cell phone and wireless data provider, which provides your local talk show. So if you want to learn about fungus, the celebration of fungus, the observation of fungus, why do we care about fungus? You're tuned into the right program. Let's get ready to talk with Cathy and Kate on Town Meeting. Cathy, let's start with you. And this obviously is a weird year for practically everything that anybody is trying to do. So explain the evolution of the Fungus Festival in a pandemic.
Yeah, it is a challenging year. This is now the third or fourth virtual festival I've planned this year, and they are just as much work to plan, but they are experienced in a totally different way by the participants, and we were excited to try to offer something this year because most of the, mushroom and foraging and fungus events around the country have been canceled. And we wanted to try to still offer something. And so we decided the best way to do that would be to try to go mostly virtual. And if we were going to be going mostly virtual, then we might as well work a little bit more collaboratively and have a more clearly blended festival. The Cordova Fungus Festival and the Girdwood Fungus Fair, as Kate will talk about, have been kind of working with each other, piggybacking off each other for several years now, but this is the first year that we are officially collaborating and officially blending our festivals. And it is pretty exciting because it's ending up giving us a lot of great content and a lot of great events, people to participate in from wherever you are.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking with Gay Wellman last week about some of the education outreach that they're doing and how the pandemic has affected that. And ironically, being virtual, if you can let enough people know that it's going on, you actually have a chance to reach really a much broader overall audience than if it was normal, which is not to say virtual is preferable, but I mean, there is kind of a silver lining in there, isn't there?
Yeah, we are trying to encourage people to register for the festival. It's free to register, but what registering for the festival does is it helps us stay in contact with you to send you that information via email so that you have the exact links to go to get to the events. And when people are registering, we get to see where they're from. And normally in a normal year, we would get, a lot of Cordovans, some Anchorage folks, some Fairbanks folks, some Valdez folks. This year, we're getting people from all over, certainly people from throughout the state, from Palmer, Soldotna, Talkeetna, a lot of Anchorage folks, Juneau. We're getting people from Minnesota, Oregon, from all types of different states. I don't think we have any international folks yet, but I wouldn't be surprised if we got some. We've got folks that are registered and participating in the event already that are from all over, which is exciting.
All right. Well, Kate, let's meet you. This is the first time I've had a chance to interact with you. So, what is your background as regards these types of festivals?
Yeah, sure. So I work for the Chugach National Forest as an ecologist. I do mostly plant work, but my educational background is in fungi. I did a master's degree on work with mushrooms associated with white bark pine down in Montana. And I've been just fascinated with fungi for 20 plus years, and I've been collecting around the state for about that long. And Cordova was the first town to put on the Fungus Festival back in 2007. I got really excited about that. I wasn't able to go to the first one, but we quickly followed suit in Girdwood the following year, and we started the Girdwood Fungus Fair in 2008, and we've been working with Cordova to share expert presenters for over 10 years now to really up the quality and expertise for these events, which is pretty cool.
Okay, well, I guess a question for the layperson like myself would be, I mean, fungus. You hear the word fungus or fungi, and I mean, I remember when we had water damage in our basement, and some fungus and lichens and things sprung up out of the carpet, and that seemed bad. So, there's a stigma oftentimes whether it's athlete's foot fungus or this kind of fungus or whatever. But you guys really celebrate these particular fungi. So what is the big deal with it? What is it that makes it so intriguing?
Oh, where to begin? First of all, I think a lot of folks learned when they were younger, these would be people maybe over 45, 50, that maybe fungi were related to plants and they're just kind of a lower version of a plant. But now we know that they're their own kingdom. They're the second most diverse group of organisms on the planet. And they're extremely critical for forest and ecosystem health. You wouldn't have beer or wine without fungi or delicious cheeses. So they're important for culinary values, far beyond the amazing truffle that can go for $800 a pound, or the porcini mushroom, which we have here and is highly prized around the world. So it's really, really hard to begin to explain in just a soundbite why fungi are so cool.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not limited to a soundbite. So is it mostly, so it has a lot to do with then the culinary value? Is that a lot of what these festivals focus on, or is it broader than that?
It's broader than that. Of course, a lot of people are attracted to these festivals because they want to know what mushrooms they can eat. We do have a strong foraging community in Alaska, and we do have a lot of good edible mushrooms up here. But to get confident with identifying edible mushrooms, there's also other uses we end up highlighting with these events. When we can do that in person, like you can use them as mushroom dyes, for example, or you can paint them, or various artistic things. But we try to also highlight the just sheer diversity of mushrooms that we have. It's really important to getting back to the edibility aspect for people to understand what sort of key characteristics they're looking for, just to make sure that they collect the right species. You should be aware of some basic concepts in mushroom identification, and just to get a basic understanding of how many species we're dealing with. Not that you have to know them all, but just to have that foundation. So these events, when we can do them in person, are really nice because we can put together this display table that we spend a week collecting for, and it showcases over 100 species that we can easily find in a weekend in the Cordova area, for example. That's just really cool, so people can get a sense of how much stuff is out there.
Okay, do you feel like the concepts that you're talking about and the things that you emphasize, are they going to translate well to virtual presentation?
I hope so. I'm just currently in the process of editing some of the pieces we've put together to post online. We did a variety of forays across the forest. There's one in Cooper Landing. There's going to be one from Anchorage area. There's going to be one from Prince William Sound with Nikki out in her sailboat. And then we put one together for Girdwood and Cordova as well. And we've also done a piece, a table talk piece that will hopefully reiterate some of the identification concepts that we'll talk about in the forays, and some of the main species or species groups that if you know just a few things of what to look for, you can feel confident at least getting it to that level.
Okay. Well, Cathy, let's come back to you then here and dive into the schedule, keeping in mind that we're having our telephonic visit here on Wednesday the 2nd, so just so we're careful of the words today and tomorrow and so forth. What can people look forward to if they decide to participate?
Well, we have a pretty great variety of events. I'm pretty excited about it. We have arts events, we have kids events, we have educational events that will teach you how to learn the basics of identification. We have culinary events, So there's kind of a broad swath and something for everyone. And most of them are virtual. So the good part about that is you can experience them from everywhere. And if it's raining cats and dogs, you don't have to be outside and getting wet. You can enjoy them from home. Or if you're busy this weekend, you can come and visit these pieces of content that will live on our channels in perpetuity. But the exciting part is that we are virtual forays and classes. We are doing YouTube premieres for them. So that means that we will have the videos set to premiere, or in other words, to be able to be seen for the first time at a certain time that's set on our schedule. And everyone will be able to tune in at that time, and then there'll be a kind of a live chat going. And during that time, there'll be experts on our end that are there to answer questions that people might have as they're watching the video, and be able to have conversations and comments back and forth with folks as they're watching those videos for the first time. But if they want to go back and watch them later, they can too, which is a great thing, because when you're out on a foray in person, you might learn some really cool tips and information, and then second guess yourself later and say, is that really what that was? Or what did he say about that thing? And with the virtual version, you can go back and actually watch it again. And all of these forays, they're going to be, not terribly long. So you shouldn't have, screen fatigue from sitting here and watching these happen, 15 minutes, 30 minutes max, to sit down and enjoy some of this really interesting information. Kate and another one of our presenters, Kitty LaBounty, are going to be giving a keynote presentation on Friday night. And this is something that we do every year for Fungus Festival. We have our keynote speaker, and it's always on Friday night. And so that's going to be happening again on our YouTube channel on Friday night. And people can go to CordovaFungusFest.com/schedule, and they'll see all of this information. So I hope people, if you're sitting at home for some reason listening to this, and you have your computer, or if you've got your phone in front of you while you're listening to this broadcast, you can just go ahead and bring up CordovaFungusFest.com/schedule, and you can see some of these cool events. So the keynote that I was just mentioning that's happening on Friday night, they're going to be on the topic of getting started with mushrooms. So when Kate was talking about some of these key characteristics that are important to kind of learn, and these key species and types of mushrooms that are going to be easiest to identify as edible or not edible, they're going to kind of go through that and help you identify common mushrooms with south-central Alaska. And that is brought to us by the BLM Camel Creek Science Center. And you can learn more about that and both the presenters, Kate and Kitty, on the website. We're also going to be having some other classes during the weekend. One of them is going to be a paint night class with Jessica Hoover. She's done several of these classes for our festival and other festivals that the Chamber's put on throughout the years. This will be her third Fungus Fest paint night, and it's pretty cool because she's actually going to be painting on fungus. So there's a type of fungus, a type of mushroom called a bear's bread, and it's also called an artist's conch. And it's a type of mushroom that's a shelf mushroom that grows in a tree. It's pretty hard, and when you harvest it, you can actually let it dry and paint on it, and that's a pretty common use for this kind of mushroom. And so she'll be painting on one of those, and we do have some of those for purchase at the Chamber. If people want to buy one of those that's already prepped and ready to paint on, they can paint along with her on Thursday night. So that's Thursday, September 3rd at 7 p.m., and that'll be through Facebook Live on our Cordova Fungus Fest Facebook page. And again, that will live on. So if people aren't hearing this until after Thursday, or if they forget and they want to go back Thursday and do it, they can still watch that video later. But the neat thing is she wants people to paint no matter what they're doing. And so if you have a piece of old wood, if you have rocks that you've collected, if you have an old palette canvas that you want to paint over, just paper, whatever it is. I know somebody last time we did this actually had their iPad out, and they were, creating some artwork on their iPad with their Apple Pencil. So there's all kinds of ways that you can participate in, and if Jessica's running it, it's going to be hilarious and fun to watch. So that's happening. That's kind of the first scheduled event. It's that Thursday night paint night. And then after that, we'll have the Friday night keynote address. That's like another scheduled event. And then there's some events that are happening throughout the weekend, and actually throughout the week, and have already started, including a mushroom storybook forest, which is a really neat, family-friendly, learning and fun and get outdoors installation that the Cordova Public Library put up at Mavis Island. It's also known as Boy Scout Island. And there's a trail to get out there. And along that trail, there's all these sandwich boards with pages from this book. And the book is called Two for Me, One for You. And it's about mushrooms and sharing and all that good stuff. So that is happening right now. You can go see it today, and it'll stay up through Monday, September 7th. So go check that out. Also, right now, people could jump in and be part of our wild food virtual recipe swap. This is happening on Facebook. So hopefully you have a Facebook account. In Cordova, most people do because it's the best way to buy and sell and trade things. But if you don't have one, you can email us, and we'll get your recipes included and send you a compiled list. But there's a link to the Facebook group that is living on that website, CordovaFungusFest.com/schedule. And there's also an email address there in the description of that event as well that, again, you can send the recipes to and get the compiled recipes back from if you don't have a Facebook account. And a couple other things that are happening throughout the weekend. There is a fungus photo contest, and this is kind of fun. We haven't done this in the past. That is happening. It's an online form that you can fill out and attach your photos, and there's different categories that you can attach to each photo, and there's a certain number that you can submit, and there's some guidelines there. And for prizes, first place is going to get $100 cash, and then we're also giving away vintage festival merchandise and some other prizes. And then we're also going to be having throughout the week an iNaturalist project. That is happening. There's one that is for the Cordova-Prince William Sound region, and there's another that is for the Girdwood Anchorage region. And iNaturalist is this really awesome app that you can download to your phone, or you can access it through your computer browser. And it's great if you can get it on your phone, because then as you're out and about, you can just snap a picture. You open up the app, snap a picture, put it in there, and if you think you have an idea of what the species name might be for it, you can type that in. Otherwise, it'll give you suggestions on what its algorithm and the previous posts from other contributors lead it to believe that it might be. So it helps you identify what that is. It could be, and you can use this for mushrooms, plants, insects, all sorts of things. But we're using it this weekend for mushroom, and we're making it kind of fun and competitive, trying to see who can make the most observations. And there's a couple of different items that are going to go into this competition. And again, you can read more about that on the website.
All right. Well, it sounds like a pretty good lineup of stuff, despite the different format. And again, that website sounds like a very good asset, CordovaFungusFest.com. We're speaking with Cathy Renfeldt and Kate Mohatt here on the town meeting program. And if you're catching it in the middle, remember, of course, it'll go on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/CordovaTV, and be available until the end of time or the end of the internet or of power. So, Kate, let's come back to you now for a sec. I'm curious, what is it that makes, say, Cordova a particularly special place for fungus festing?
Oh, yeah. Well, so the rain is obviously really good for mushrooms, and Cordova typically has plenty of that. But it's also got a really unique suite of mushrooms that we don't get here in Girdwood, just 80 miles to the west. And I think Cordova is the northern limit for a lot of species that are more common in the Pacific Northwest or in southeast Alaska. The blue chanterelle is a really great example of that. It's this really beautiful blue. It looks like a chanterelle. It actually isn't, but it's still eaten. And it's also a really highly valued dye mushroom. I think we might have one or two species in Cordova, and it's not found north or west of Cordova. There's several different species like that. Another really notable one is the Cordova milky cap. Cordova has a very rare species of milky cap called Lactarius cordovaensis, and it is only found in Cordova. It's known from 2 locations on the planet. That's pretty dang special.
All right. And how many different communities do you participate in these festivals with, Kate? Is it just Girdwood and Cordova, or do you do it a number of other places?
I've been really fortunate to do this in a number of places. We did a one-time fungus fair in Yakutat a few years ago. I also go to Petersburg frequently. They have a rainforest festival that on some years features mushrooms. We've also done this in Wrangell and Prince of Wales.
The reason I ask is I'm curious, the level of enthusiasm for it, say, that Cordova has to other areas. Do you find Cordovans to be particularly passionate fungus folks?
Oh, yeah. I'd say in general, Southeast Alaska are very enthusiastic about fungi, but Cordova's got a really rich group of artists, and fungi can be used, as I mentioned, for a lot of different crafts. So, like I mentioned, the blue chanterelle, Cordova has a couple other species of mushrooms that are highly sought after for dyes. And so I know that there are a number of people in the community that are pretty happy that Cordova has that resource there.
You mentioned, Kate, the culinary part of mushrooms, obviously, the fact that they can be used for art. Are there other, setting aside the whole magic mushroom thing, but other practical uses, medicinal or anything else that make these something for somebody to be interested in?
Oh, yeah. Well, something I always find curious is, a lot of beginning or budding myco enthusiasts want to know which mushrooms are edible. But, there's a number of folks that are just interested in photographing them. They're extremely beautiful and charismatic. And like I mentioned, there's just a wide diversity. And something I always find curious is, there's quite a few enthusiastic birders, but you would never join a Audubon Society and ask which birds are edible. And I sometimes feel that way about mushrooms when I'm looking at some beautiful, striking, rare mushroom. That kind of difference is interesting to me. But the other thing, as far as uses, this wouldn't be anything that we would explore during these events. But something that's really taking off in the literature in research is using mycelium from fungi as building materials. And there's research going on here in Anchorage on that, as well as several places across the world as a sustainable building material and cheaply produced at some point anyway.
Yeah. Well, and so, the reason I ask that, of course, is because there may be things, and I would include myself among the uneducated, that folks hearing about this might think, well, I don't really like to eat these, so I'm not that interested. But there are a lot of other things to learn, from just understanding the natural world around you a little bit better to, ways to appreciate these while leaving them where they're at, like you said, with photography or with art, or uses beyond just, pizza or something like that make them more interesting. And a festival like this is obviously the perfect opportunity to do that. Cathy, normally there's a food event associated with this, if memory serves, that I imagine is probably not going to be possible this year.
So Wild Harvest Feast is going to be happening a little later. The Top River Watershed Project, that is one of their main annual fundraisers. And in the past, they've been a real active festival partner, and they're still involved this year in the virtual festival, but they're focusing their efforts for their Wild Harvest Feast on, I think, next month. I think it's probably going to happen in October. So we aren't able to feature that as a part of the festival schedule right now, and I believe it will be primarily virtual. But we do have some culinary stuff happening during festival. We have the virtual recipe shop that I mentioned, and then also Nikki Newcomb, who is one of the Fungus Festival volunteers and contributors that has been super active in our festival for years and has just started out as an enthusiastic amateur and has grown in her knowledge just by attending festival and taking, paying close attention, going out and exploring on her own, trying things on her own, working within the community of other people who are interested in these things. So she's very excited to share what she knows, because she knows what it feels like to be someone who doesn't know anything about this stuff. It can be very frustrating when all you want to do is be able to know if you could use this mushroom or not, or if it's dangerous or not. And when you can't figure that out, that can be frustrating. So she's very excited and enthusiastic to share her knowledge. And one of the areas that she's kind of really blossomed in is processing and preserving mushrooms. So she's going to be providing a video class called After the Foray, what to do with all those mushrooms. So she's going to help us learn how to process it. Like, do you wash them or not? Do you brush them or not? What if they have a little bit of, a rotten spot? Do you throw the whole thing out, or can you keep part of it? And do you dry them? Do you pickle them? How do you do these things? Which ones work best for which? And then she'll walk you through the process of actually how to do some of that stuff. And again, like I said, with these YouTube premieres, she's going to be on the platform, ready to answer your questions as these premieres are happening. So that if people want to actually, in that way, they can, really interact with the presenters as if it were, like a real situation. Another thing I didn't really get into before was the kids event. So I mentioned that there's the Storybook Forest, which is a really fun family event. There's also going to be a kid-led kid foray. So Gabriel Wingard is a really awesome fungus phenom, is what I call him, who has always just been really excited about mushrooms. He's not so excited about eating them. He's just really excited about learning about them and finding them and identifying them. And he and his mom have been together leading kids forays for us for a few years, and so they're doing that again. They'll be in Anchorage for their foray, so that kind of expands the reach of our festival and showing what kind of different mushrooms are available here and there and throughout this region. And that'll be on our YouTube channel. And then there's also a shrooming scavenger hunt that is being put on by the Consumer Sound Science Center and the Copper River Watershed Project. And that's going to be at Crater Lake Trail, just towards the bottom of the trail. They'll be right at the sign, the trail sign. There'll be a little box there where you can pick out a piece of paper that's got the instructions for how to participate in this event. And then you won't have to go that far up the trail. So if you've got don't worry about having to hike the whole Crater Lake Trail. It's all towards the bottom. There's, again, lots of information about that and some coloring pages that can be printed and enjoyed from anywhere on our festival website. And so that's one of the in-person events that is kind of happening throughout the weekend, that in the Storybook Forest. And another in-person event that's happening in Cordova is happening on Saturday at 3 p.m., and that is a Write and Hike event with Tara Anderson. So Tara she was born and raised in Cordova, and she's been a professional and amateur writer for about 10 years. She really enjoys encouraging other people to explore creative writing. So for a couple of years now, she's been hosting writing events and creative writing events during our Fungus Festival. So this year she's doing the same, and it's going to be a socially distanced hike with all kinds of safety precautions in place at the Stack Trail on Saturday, September 5th at 3 p.m. And then in addition to that, there's going to be some fun stuff happening on our social media channels. We have an Instagram takeover by Noah Siegel, who has been a really awesome contributor and expert for our festival for many years. I'm sure Kate could go into his background and history, but not only is he a very skilled mycologist, but he's a really talented and award-winning photographer. And so he's going to be doing an Instagram takeover for us on our Cordova, Alaska Instagram page, and then also on the Trinidad Mycological Society, which is the Girdwood mushroom group on there. And then he's also going to be helping to judge our photo contest. And then one other thing I wanted to say, when you were talking about uses of mushrooms, and I'm sure Kate could go on forever about this, but one thing I found really interesting about mushrooms is that they have a very strong impact on the entire forest and ecosystem around them. They're integral to the ecosystem running and functioning and repairing itself. In this festival, we like to focus on the fungus-forest-fish connection. And basically, to break that down in a digestible way, there is a very strong connection between what happens to fish and what happens in forests and what happens with fungus. And they all kind of rely on each other, and they're part of this loop. And they kind of couldn't survive without each other, but especially the fungus. The fungus is a really integral part of that. And maybe I'll let Kate go into that a little bit more. But, the mycorrhizal network, which is the underground network that connects all the mushrooms to each other, when you see a mushroom, that's just the fruiting body. That's just the part that pops up out of the ground. There's really a huge network of mycorrhizal and mycelium underneath the ground that is connecting all those mushrooms, and it's also connecting with all the trees. And there's been studies that have actually shown that trees can actually send messages to each other through this network, which is through the mushrooms.
Okay, Kate, elaborate on that. That's pretty interesting stuff.
Oh, it's extremely interesting. And Cathy, I think did a fine job of explaining that. But getting back to the fungus forest fish connection, we've heard of Amy Gulick's book. She was a guest one year, by the way, for the Fungus Festival, but Salmon in the Trees. And it's about how nitrogen from the returning salmon nourish the forest and make it healthy. And the way they do that, the only way they can get that nitrogen from the decaying salmon and into the trees is through fungi. Bacteria break down the salmon, but then the fungi are able to transport that nitrogen to the tree via the mycorrhizal network. And mycorrhizal fungi are ubiquitous in conifer forests. They're ubiquitous in almost all forests. And so essentially what that is it's a mutualism between fungi and trees. You cannot have, a lot of species cannot thrive or survive without their fungal partners. And several, like Douglas fir, for example, has at least over 200 or 300 species of fungi documented to associate with it. A lot of our choice edible mushrooms are mycorrhizal feasts like the king bolete or the truffle, and that's why they're so expensive and hard to come by. They require that tree host for them to exist. And it's really, really hard to farm like that, for example. So that's why finding these choice edibles is such a rare and exciting treat, because they require that mutualistic relationship to exist.
Is there any kind of an element here where people need to be cautious, say, about harvesting or over exploiting? Is there some care that needs to be given to that?
It's always a good practice to be judicious in your foraging and just harvest what you need. It's always a good idea to leave a few behind. With mushrooms, you never want to pick the older ones anyway, so you're probably going to leave some behind. There's not a huge concern about them being particularly impacted by harvesting activities. Like Cathy mentioned, the mushroom is just the fruiting body of a much larger organism.
That's amazing. I never thought of them that way. I just figured it was, like a carrot or a potato or something like that. The thing was the thing, and to learn that there's a lot more going on there underneath the surface is. How long have people known about that? Is that a recent discovery, or have people known for quite a while?
It's been a while. At least that's a good question. When exactly did we learn of the extent? I'd say within certainly the last 100 years. I do find it frustrating, the lack of representation in basic science textbooks, these things that I think are pretty dang important. Yeah. So, it is surprising.
Yeah.
The amount going on underground, yeah.
Well, as we, again, it's neat that there's so much to learn and so many opportunities to. As we kind of come to the end of the time slot, Cathy, will come to you with the famous "anything else you want to add" question.
Absolutely. So this festival is pretty much free this year. as we put on these virtual events, as I said, there's still some work to plan them. There's still experts putting in their time. You'll see once you go into some of these events and look at this virtual content that this is rich content and information, and it's there for you all to enjoy for free. So that's pretty awesome. So I just want to thank the festival partners that helped put this on. There's the Cordova Chamber of Commerce, which I represent. Kate represents the Chugach National Forest, and she's also one of the co-founders of the Turn a Good Arm Mycological Society, which is one of our festival partners too. In Girdwood, we have Girdwood Inc., which is a nonprofit that helps to make this possible, and the Girdwood Parks and Rec. I mentioned the Campbell Creek Science Center. They were hosting the keynote, and I mentioned the Prince James Sound Science Center and the Copper Up the Watershed project that are part of this group and effort. And there's also the Net Loft. They provide lots of fun and interesting ways to get creative with your hands during the festival. And Dottie's putting together her events right now that we're going to be sharing with our email list. As soon as you get that information, which will probably be today or tomorrow. If you want to get those emails, if you want to be advised of what's happening and get these direct links to the festival, all you have to do is register. It's free. There's a button right on the website that says register. It takes you to a Google form, and you don't have to have a Google account to use it. You just fill in your name and email address and tell us how you heard about it, and that's it. And then we'll send you some emails with all this information, and then you'll also be entered to win some fun festival prizes. And the other bonus here is that it helps us with our festival to measure the impact, because that is one thing that's hard to do with these virtual festivals. You can't count heads. So it's hard to say how many people are participating, but the people who are supporting us, the partners and the sponsors and the funders, that's important information for them to know still. And if we want to continue to get funding from these folks to put on these events, we need to continue to be able to provide the same kind of information about participation and how people felt about the events and what events were more popular. So by people registering, that really helps us get there. We do have lots of festival sponsors to thank. The big ones are Cordova Telephone Co-op and Cordova Wireless, Edible Alaska, and the EAC Corp, and again, the U.S. Forest Service. And then there's a whole list of other sponsors that are mostly local Cordova businesses. Please take a look at that and tell them thank you. Thank them with your social media points. Thank them with your dollars, with your business. These businesses are working hard to try to stay afloat and stay open and provide what you need on a daily basis as far as supplies and services. And they're working hard also to try to keep these events coming to you, and they're supporting us. And there's a few other ways that a person listening to the show or a participant could support the festival. One of them, as I said, was registering for the festival. That's an easy way that you can support us. Another thing you can do is you could check out our festival merchandise. We did something new this year. Instead of, picking out one style of T-shirt, ordering a couple boxes of it, getting it shipped here, and then selling it from the table, we worked with an online printer, and now we can have a large variety of different printed items in different colors and sizes and styles, and adults, kids, babies, leggings, and tote bags and phone covers and mugs and stickers. And it's all available through our website, and it'll be printed on demand and shipped straight to you. The shipping time has been pretty good so far. So if you ordered right now, you'd probably get it in a week or so, maybe up to 2 weeks. And so that's just on our website, CordovaFungusFest.com. You click on merchandise, and that'll bring you to that stuff. And those purchases that you make support our festival. We also have a button there if anybody wanted to make a donation to the festival. We are taking donations too. It's certainly not required, but if you feel inclined to do so, you can do that. And you could sponsor the festival if you're someone who's a business who wants to be included in our list and you're not there already. Let me know. We can include you in that list. And the last way you can support the festival is just by attending it and sharing that experience as you do it. Share it by word of mouth. Share it in emails to people. Share it through your social media. If you see something cool that we post, click the share button, comment, like it. All of that stuff helps us, spread the good word of fungus.
All right. Well, Kate, we'll come back to you once more for our last word. Anything you want to leave us with?
Sure. I'll I'll make it quick. Cathy covered a lot of ground with what we're offering. I'm pretty blown away at the amount of content that we've been able to pull together, largely through volunteer efforts, and I'm really excited to see how this all works. I hope a lot of people are able to tune in either this weekend or, enjoy the content for, as you said, as long as we have internet. This is just, it's new to us all, and I'm pretty excited to be a part of it.
Well, it sounds like our folks here are very glad to have you involved, Kate, and I want to thank the both of you for a good visit and wish you all the best for success in this brand new world.
Thank you. Here's the Cordova Fungus Fest.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
A big thanks to Cathy and Kate talking about the Fungus Festival here on the Town Meeting Talk Show for the 3rd of September. Sounds like it's going to be a very fungusy weekend. Learn more at that website. And a big thanks again to Cordova Wireless Communications for making this program possible on KLAM. Remember, if you ever have ideas for a town meeting show, please let us know so we can try to make that happen for you. And all of the programming that we postponed in the 10 a.m. hour is on the way here on KLAM.